In the dead of winter, a superpower's gamble in the mountains would ignite a decade of fire. Christmas, 1979. The silence of the Hindu Kush is shattered by the roar of Soviet helicopter gunships, spearheading an armored advance towards Kabul. In Moscow, the Politburo has made a fateful choice to rescue a faltering communist ally, but the Red Army's own leadership harbors deep doubts. So what drove the Soviet Union to cross this Rubicon? To understand the invasion, we must first look at the nation it sought to control. Afghanistan in the 20th century was a land defined by its rugged geography and its position as a buffer between empires. After World War II, King Zahir Shah presided over a period of cautious calm. His government walked a tightrope, introducing mild reforms to placate modernizers, while fiercely suppressing both hardline conservatives and the growing Soviet-linked communist movement. The 1964 constitution opened the door for political parties, and Kabul's universities exploded into hotbeds of ideological debate. It was here that the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, the PDPA, was born, its founders Amin Karimel and Taraki already in secret contact with the KGB. While some looked to Marxism, others turned to Islam for answers. Educated Islamists, inspired by groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, debated the future of their faith in a modern state. The king, ironically, sometimes encouraged these Islamist currents as a counterweight to the Marxists. The most significant of these groups, Jamiat-e-Islami, also formed within a university's walls. Afghanistan's foreign relations were equally complex. Officially non-aligned, it accepted aid from both Cold War blocs, though Soviet support for infrastructure and its military became a cornerstone. One American observer noted that Soviet technicians lived in such comfort abroad. They were often dismayed when their tours ended. This international aid fostered a small, urban middle class, but the vast traditional countryside largely resisted the social changes creeping into the cities. By the 1970s, Afghanistan's modernization was stalling, and the king's fear of communism prevented further democratization. In 1973, the king's cousin, Muhammad Daud Khan, seized power in a military-backed coup. Initially, he cooperated with the more moderate communists, but he soon cast them aside, ruling as an autocrat and purging his government and army of dissent. Islamist opponents, enraged by his progressive social policies and brutal rule, found a patron in Pakistan's ISI intelligence service, which provided training and weapons. After a failed ISI-backed uprising in 1975, Daud cracked down, driving many Islamist fighters into exile in Pakistan. One fighter, a former engineering student, recalled a harrowing retreat over dark, freezing mountains, falling ill from the cold as they evaded their enemies. These exiled militants, though divided, would become a potent force. Claiming to speak for the hundreds of thousands of Afghan refugees flooding into Pakistan, Daud now sought to balance his foreign ties, reaching out to the US for intelligence on the Soviets, while also signing economic deals with Moscow. During a 1977 meeting, Soviet leader Brezhnev warned Daud that NATO spies were working in northern Afghanistan and should be expelled. Daud defiantly replied that Afghanistan was a free country that would not be told what to do. The stage was set for a confrontation. In April 1978, massive demonstrations at a communist funeral prompted Daud to arrest PDPA leaders. But the communists were now a united KGB-supported force with deep infiltration of the army. Tanks stormed Kabul, jets streaked overhead, and PDPA troops killed Daud and over 1,000 of his supporters. A 15-year-old in Kabul that day heard the radio announce the Saur Revolution was victorious. His teachers made the class applaud before sending them home early. His father's reaction was a grim, "God bless us. The future is not good." The coup shocked both Moscow and Washington, each suspecting the other was behind it. The new Revolutionary Council, led by Taraki and Amin, launched a radical program, land reform, women's rights, and a brutal crackdown on all opposition. Publicly, Taraki claimed Afghanistan would remain non-aligned, but its neighbors were terrified. Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the US all began supporting the training of Afghan Islamist fighters. The Soviet Union cautiously welcomed a new communist partner, sending advisors and millions in military aid. But the PDPA was already tearing itself apart, with the radical faction purging moderates. They also wildly misjudged their deeply religious population, viewing clergy and tribal leaders as feudal obstacles to progress. Taraki declared they should be uprooted like a cancer. The regime launched a full-scale assault, arresting and killing mullahs and their families. turning the population decisively against them. Local uprisings spread, and the PDPA responded with even greater violence from its secret police and paramilitaries. The regime's collapse accelerated in 1979. In February, U.S. Ambassador Adolf Dubs was kidnapped and killed in a botched rescue attempt involving Afghan forces and the KGB, leading the U.S. to cut off aid. In March, the city of Herat erupted. An entire army division mutinied, joining protesters who then lynched Soviet civilians. The government recaptured the city at the cost of thousands of lives. A similar revolt in Ktora province was witnessed by a 16-year-old boy who saw soldiers execute men in a field after his father told him to run. A panicked Taraki begged Moscow to intervene, admitting, "Almost nobody supports the government." The Politburo was horrified by the regime's brutality, with one member lamenting, "You see what kind of Marxists we found." Amin now became prime minister, and the rivalry between him and Taraki intensified. Both asked for Soviet troops, but Moscow refused, sending only more equipment and advisors. The Mujahideen, however, had already taken note, reporting that Russian advisors were present, and some had been killed. The Soviets decided Amin was a liability, blaming him for the policy failures and massacres, and grew suspicious of his brief studies in America. They informed Taraki, who then attempted to have Amin assassinated. The plot failed, and Amin retaliated, having Taraki murdered with a pillow and seizing full control. The insurgency exploded. Army desertions skyrocketed, and the Mujahideen controlled several provinces. In a move that alarmed Moscow, Amin then reached out to the US and UK, suggesting he wanted closer ties. The KGB wrongly suspected he was a CIA agent. By December, the Politburo was ready to act. KGB chief Andropov, once a skeptic, now argued that military action would allow them to secure a loyal government. The decision was made. Amin would be overthrown and replaced with the exiled moderate Babur Karam. A limited military deployment would support the new regime. The chief of the general staff, Ogarkov, warned this would alienate the entire Muslim world. Andropov cut him off. "Focus on military matters. Leave political decisions to us." Defense Minister Ustinov gave the order. The invasion would be carried out by the new 40th Army, with tens of thousands of troops entering from the north and northeast, securing the crucial ring road. Simultaneously, Operation Baikal 79 would airlift an entire airborne division into Kabul and Bagram to seize key objectives. But the real drama was Operation Storm 353, the plot to kill Amin. For weeks, Soviet special forces had been infiltrating Kabul. The Muslim battalion, composed of Soviet Central Asian troops in Afghan uniforms, had arrived to supposedly protect Amin. They were joined by elite KGB teams. The plan was complex. Amin had just moved to the heavily fortified Tojbug Palace, a hilltop fortress surrounded by mines, barracks, and tanks. The Soviet assault force was divided into a dozen groups with specific tasks: neutralize the tanks, storm the palace, provide fire support. On December 27th, the invasion began. Soviet divisions crossed the border as paratroopers landed in Kabul. Amin, believing the Soviets were his allies, was reportedly on the phone discussing how to present this assistance to the world. Just after this, KGB agents tried to kill him with poisoned cola, but he survived, as sabotage teams crippled Kabul's communications and immobilized Afghan tanks. The assault on the palace was launched prematurely when initial gunfire alerted the defenses. Afghan guards put up a fierce fight, knocking out Soviet armored vehicles. One Soviet colonel wrote in his diary that the convoy's movement could be tracked by the sound of gunfire and tracer rounds lighting up the sky. The special forces stormed the palace on foot, fighting room to room, throwing grenades and firing automatically. They found and killed Hafizullah Amin and his two sons. The operation lasted 43 minutes but was brutally efficient. The next day, Babur Karamal arrived in Kabul, promising an end to the violence, even as Amin's followers were being executed. The Soviet Union had swapped a dictator in a single, bloody night. Why did they take this colossal risk? Some historians point to the influence of Soviet advisors in Kabul. Others note the USSR's recent successful interventions in Angola and Ethiopia, hoping the PDPA could be a similar vanguard. But the decisive factor was Cold War paranoia. The fear that Amin was untrustworthy and might realign Afghanistan with the West outweighed the massive risks. As Foreign Minister Gromyko had warned beforehand, they would be fighting the Afghan people, and it would destroy their global reputation. The international reaction was swift and severe. President Jimmy Carter declared that Soviet expansionism must be stopped, framing the invasion as a colonial conquest. The US began funneling massive support to the Mujahideen through Pakistan, a partnership that would lead America to overlook Pakistan's nuclear ambitions. Saudi Arabia matched US funding, and the UN condemned the invasion. A war meant to last 6 months would stretch for a decade, a graveyard of empires claiming another. We hope this look into a pivotal Cold War conflict was insightful. If you want us to continue exploring this history, from the Soviet War to the aftermath, your support makes it possible. Please help the channel Winds of Thought by liking this video. Ambitious documentary projects rely on our community. Thank you for watching.